Hello, orchid lovers around the world. Today I want to share with you something a little different. What I have here, oh dear, this looks really bad. I recently found this orchid in my garden, and honestly, at first glance it broke my heart. The leaves are the first thing you notice, or rather, what's left of them. They're not firm or glossy like a healthy orchid should have. Instead, they've gone completely limp, wrinkled, and shriveled up. Some have already fallen off entirely, while the few pieces still clinging to the stem are soft, yellowed, and spotted with decay. They have no strength left to support the plant, and just by touching them, you can feel how lifeless they become. When an orchid's leaves reach this stage, it's usually a clear sign that the plant has stopped getting what it needs from its roots. It's the plant's way of showing us that something deeper is wrong. If we move past the leaves and take a closer look at the stem and crown, the story doesn't get much better. The central crown, which should be firm and green, has collapsed in on itself. It feels soft and hollow, showing classic signs of crown rot. At this point, many growers would simply conclude the plant is gone. And honestly, from the surface, it does look that way. The leaves are beyond recovery, the crown has collapsed, and the stem is no longer functioning as it should. But here's the thing with orchids. The true heart of the plant is hidden in its roots. Even when everything above looks dead, sometimes the roots can still hold life. So before I decide whether this orchid is truly lost, I'm going to carefully remove it from its pot and take a closer look at what's happening beneath the surface. Now, this plant has a lot of substrate covering it, and I mean a lot. Over time, layers of bark, moss, and bits of organic material have completely packed around the roots. At first, this seems like a good thing because it keeps the plant stable, but in reality, it's one of the main reasons orchids can decline like this. Unlike soil-loving plants, orchids need air moving around their roots. When a substrate breaks down, it compacts, trapping moisture and suffocating the roots. That excess moisture also creates the perfect breeding ground for fungus and bacteria, which is often what leads to root rot. That's why removing every bit of it is absolutely crucial. Think of it like peeling away layers to get to the truth. I start by gently pressing around the pot to loosen the mass, then carefully lift the orchid out. What you'll notice is that the roots are tangled tightly with chunks of bark and moss clinging to them. With patience, I use my fingers to tease the substrate away, pulling it off piece by piece. It's important not to rush this step because you don't want to accidentally tear the roots. Even the fragile ones can sometimes still be alive. Now that the orchid is free from its old substrate, we can finally see the root system. And as expected, it doesn't look good. Most of the roots here are soft, mushy, and hollow, clear signs that they've completely died. This is the point where we need to be decisive. Using a clean pair of scissors or pruning shears, I'll carefully cut away every root that's no longer alive. And when I say almost all of it, I really mean it. The majority of these roots are beyond saving. You can test them by gently squeezing. Healthy roots will feel firm and springy, while dead ones collapse like paper or peel away in strings. Those are the ones we must remove. Don't be afraid if, after cutting, you're left with very little. Sometimes only one or two firm roots survive, and in other cases the plant may be left completely bare. It might look drastic, but this step is crucial. By removing the dead, rotting tissue, we're stopping bacteria and fungi from spreading further, and we're giving the orchid its best chance to focus all its remaining strength on producing new roots. Now it's time to give it a nice, gentle wash. A light spray of water is all it takes. You can use the sink, a handheld shower, or even a hose set to a soft mist. The goal here is not to blast the plant, but to rinse away any lingering debris, bits of old substrate, or slimy residue clinging to the roots. Think of this step as giving the orchid a fresh start, washing away the past so it can focus on recovery. As you rinse, take your time. Rotate the plant in your hands and let the water reach every angle. You'll notice how much cleaner and brighter the roots look once all the dirt and decay have been washed away. Once that's done and the roots have had a good rinse, the next step is to dry the plant. This is just as important as the wash itself because orchids are highly sensitive to lingering moisture in the wrong places. Take a clean, soft cloth or some tissue and gently pat the roots dry. Let's move on to making a natural fertilizer to help it recover. For this, we'll be using aloe vera. This plant is often called nature's healer. It's full of vitamins, enzymes, and natural compounds that can strengthen roots and boost growth. We'll start by taking a fresh aloe vera leaf and cutting it into small pieces. The reason we slice it down like this is to expose more of that gel inside, which is where all the good stuff is stored. You'll notice the gel is thick, almost sticky, and packed with nutrients. Once we cut the aloe vera into small pieces, go ahead and place them all into a clean container. Now, pour in about 500 milliliters of fresh, clean water. This will act as the base of our natural fertilizer. Now for our next ingredient, we're going to use something a little unusual: breadcrumbs. Yes, plain breadcrumbs. They may not look like much, but when soaked properly, they release natural yeast and trace nutrients that can act as a mild growth booster for orchids. Measure out about 3 teaspoons of breadcrumbs and place them into another clean container. Next, pour in 200 milliliters of hot water. The warmth will help soften the bread and activate the natural compounds inside. Give the mixture a good stir until the bread begins to dissolve. Then close the lid tightly. To keep the warmth steady, wrap the container with a towel. This will allow the mixture to steep gently, almost like brewing a natural fertilizer tea. After 1 full hour, it's time to bring everything together. Grab yourself a clean strainer and place it over your container. First, pour in the aloe vera solution, then follow with the breadcrumb mixture. The strainer will catch any leftover chunks or pulp, leaving us with a smooth liquid. What you're left with is a fresh, nutrient-rich, all-natural fertilizer. A homemade tonic that combines the healing properties of aloe vera with the gentle nourishment from the breadcrumbs. This simple mixture is mild, safe, and perfectly suited for orchids in recovery. Now we're going to transfer our fertilizer solution into a larger container, one that's big enough to hold the entire orchid comfortably. Carefully pour the liquid in, and then take your orchid and gently submerge the whole plant into the solution. This step allows every part of the orchid, the roots, the crown, even the stem, to fully soak in and absorb all those natural nutrients we've prepared. Think of it as a complete rejuvenation bath, giving the plant the chance to drink deeply after such a tough recovery process. We'll leave the orchid in this solution for about 45 minutes. That's enough time for the aloe vera to deliver its healing compounds and for the bread-based mixture to provide a gentle nutritional boost. After 45 minutes have passed, gently lift the orchid out of the container and take a closer look. Right away, you'll notice how much of a difference this soak has made. The roots, which were once looking dry, wrinkled, and lifeless, now appear plumper, firmer, and even start showing that healthy, silvery green glow. This is a clear sign that they've taken in moisture and nutrients, almost like they've come back to life. The crown and stem, too, look refreshed. Instead of appearing dull and withered, they now carry a faint sheen of hydration, as though the plant itself has breathed a sigh of relief. If you run your fingers gently along the roots, you'll feel that they're no longer hollow or flimsy, but instead have gained some substance and strength. Now that our orchid has soaked up all those nutrients, it's time to protect the freshly trimmed areas. For this step, we're going to use a simple but powerful natural remedy: cinnamon powder. Cinnamon works as a natural antifungal and antibacterial agent, sealing off wounds and keeping infections from spreading. Take a small, clean paintbrush and dip the tip lightly into the cinnamon powder. Then, gently brush it over the trimmed parts of the roots and any open cuts where we removed dead tissue. After you're done applying the cinnamon, it's time to move our orchid into its new home. We'll start with a pot that has clear drainage holes at the bottom. Drainage is absolutely essential because orchids hate sitting in stagnant water. A pot with holes ensures that excess water can escape freely, keeping the roots healthy and preventing rot. Next, take some clean pine bark and spread a thin layer at the bottom of the pot. This first layer acts like a cushion, creating airflow and preventing the roots from being pressed directly against the pot. Once that's ready, carefully position your orchid in the center of the pot, spreading the roots gently so they have room to breathe and grow. Now begin filling in the rest of the pine bark around the plant, little by little. Shake or tap the pot gently as you go. This helps the bark settle evenly and fills in gaps without compacting it too tightly. Orchids love a potting mix that's airy and loose, so always make sure there's space for both moisture and oxygen to reach the roots. Now we're going to add the final touches. Take some fresh sphagnum moss and gently place it on the top layer of the pot. This moss will act like a natural blanket. It helps keep moisture in while still allowing air to circulate around the roots. Don't press it down too tightly. A light, fluffy layer works best. Next, it's time to give our orchid its very first drink in its new home. Slowly pour the solution we prepared earlier around the pot, letting it seep down through the pine bark. You'll notice how the liquid drains out of the holes at the bottom. That's exactly what we want because it means the roots are getting moisture without sitting in water. And here's a little trick for recovery. Take another pot with drainage holes and carefully place it upside down over the orchid's pot, like a protective dome. This creates a mini greenhouse effect, keeping the humidity high so the plant can recover faster. To make sure the top pot doesn't slip or fall, use a small clip or clamp to secure in place. After 4 weeks, you will begin to see huge changes in your orchid. What once looked like a dying plant now starts showing fresh signs of life. The roots that we trimmed and treated earlier will look stronger and firmer, some even showing bright green tips, a clear signal that new growth has begun. You may also notice the crown producing a small, tender new leaf. This is one of the best signs of recovery, because it shows that the plant is actively pushing out fresh energy. The stem looks healthier, the overall color becomes more vibrant, and the plant feels firmer to the touch compared to when we first found it limp and lifeless. Even the moss and pine bark around the pot may show little changes. retaining just enough moisture to create the perfect mini environment where your orchid feels safe to grow again. These changes might seem small, but for a plant that once looked beyond saving, they are huge milestones. They prove that with patience, care, and the right environment, orchids can truly make a comeback. Now, from here on is where things get absolutely critical: routine care. Saving the orchid is only the first step. To keep it growing stronger every day, we need to be consistent with its care. That means following a routine. Gently wipe the leaves every week to remove dust and prevent pests. Give the roots a light watering or soak only when the pine bark starts to dry, and always make sure excess water drains away. Overwatering is one of the biggest dangers, so remember, orchids prefer to be slightly dry rather than constantly wet. Keep the plant in a bright spot with indirect sunlight, and maintain good airflow around it to reduce the risk of fungus. Every 2 to 3 weeks, you can refresh with a natural aloe solution we made earlier, which gives the roots a gentle nutrient boost without overwhelming them. This routine may sound simple, but it's the difference between a struggling orchid and one that slowly transforms into a healthy, blooming plant. With patience and consistency, your orchid will not just survive, it will thrive. Finally, after 28 days, you will be amazed at the transformation. The orchid that once seemed hopeless is now showing clear signs of life. The roots, once weak and shriveled, are firmer, plumper, and in many cases tipped with fresh green growth. These little green tips are the orchid's way of saying, "I'm ready to grow again." The crown, which looked so fragile before, often begins to push out a tender new leaf. This is one of the strongest signals of recovery because it means the plant has enough energy not only to heal, but also to build something new. The older tissues will feel stronger to the touch, the colors more vibrant, and the plant as a whole will look more stable in its pot compared to the day we rescued it. Even the environment we created, the moss, the bark, and the protective cover, has been quietly doing its job, maintaining just the right balance of moisture and airflow. Every small detail has worked together to give this orchid a second chance at life. And there you have it, from what seemed like a lifeless orchid to a plant that is now on the road to recovery. This journey reminds us that orchids don't need miracles, just patience, gentle care, and consistency. If you made it this far, thank you for watching and sharing this moment with me. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next update on this orchid's progress. Until then, keep nurturing your plants with love, and remember, every orchid, no matter how hopeless it looks, deserves a second chance.